I'd been working on the steaks for a while, getting the seasoning just right, making sure the grill was at the perfect temperature. It wasn't a big deal, just a casual dinner with a few of Claire's coworkers and some of her friends. I'd been aiming for relaxed, low-key. I thought it would impress her, make her see me trying to keep things together, make her appreciate the effort. I was half finished with setting the table when she appeared. Claire had on a dress that made me do a double take. It was tight, short, all cleavage. It wasn't her usual vibe for one of these dinners. She didn't say anything, just flashed me a quick smile as she grabbed a glass of wine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something felt off, but I brushed it off. The night started fine. I turned on the playlist I'd curated for the evening. It was smooth, background noise. But then I noticed Claire. She was louder than usual, more animated. She cracked a joke that was too much, and one of her coworkers, I think it was Aaron, laughed too hard. It made me uneasy, but I kept quiet. I didn't want to seem paranoid. She poured herself another glass of wine. I didn't say anything. It wasn't my place. She wasn't sloppy yet, but I could see where it was headed. The conversation shifted to a trip I'd taken a few months back, one I'd driven. It was a quiet road trip, something Claire had wanted, but we hadn't done much of that lately. Aaron mentioned how I'd navigated us out of a rough patch, the kind of thing that might make a guy feel good, right? But then Claire shot him a look. It was a weird, sharp look. "Yeah," she said, a little too loud. "He did a great job, didn't he? Almost got us lost." She laughed, but it wasn't a laugh. It was an edge to it, like she was mocking me in front of everyone. The room went quiet for a moment. Everyone shifted uncomfortably, unsure if they were supposed to laugh along. Before I could say anything, she grabbed her glass of wine, looked me dead in the eyes, and threw it. The glass didn't hit me, thank God, but it smashed against the wall beside me, and the sound of it cracking made my stomach flip. "Don't talk about my driving skills again," she spat, glaring at me. The room was still. Not a single person moved. I wanted to say something, anything, but I just stood there. I couldn't handle it. It was too much, too public. Without saying another word, I grabbed my jacket and walked out the door. Claire didn't even try to stop me. I left them all behind, the whole mess, and drove off into the night, trying to clear my head. But I couldn't. The only thing I could hear was the sound of that glass shattering. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, but it did. It mattered a hell of a lot. I didn't even know where I was driving. I just kept my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. That damn glass, shattering against the wall like it had shattered everything. My mind kept replaying the moment, her face, the way she looked at me, the mockery in her voice. I couldn't escape it. The headlights from passing cars blurred into streaks as I drove through the empty streets. I didn't want to go home, not yet. I needed space, air, to figure out what the hell had just happened. The whole evening felt like a bad dream, one I couldn't wake up from. Eventually, I pulled into a motel parking lot. The neon sign flickered above me, casting a dull orange glow across the cracked asphalt. I parked, got out, and headed into the lobby. The guy behind the counter didn't even look up when I handed him my card. I didn't care. I just wanted to sleep, forget about everything, even if it was only for a few hours. I barely took off my shoes before I collapsed onto the bed. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. It was weird. Everything felt muffled, like I was detached from the whole thing. The humiliation wasn't immediate, but it came rushing in. What kind of person lets themselves get treated like that in front of others? I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. No messages, no calls, nothing from Claire. Not even a single damn text asking where I'd gone or if I was okay. Nothing. I should have expected it. I don't know why I was still holding out hope that maybe, just maybe, she might care that I walked out. That she might have noticed I was gone. But she hadn't. And it hit me like a brick. She didn't care. Not really. I wasn't even worth an apology, let alone a message. My thumb hovered over her name in my contacts, but I couldn't bring myself to send anything. It wasn't about pride or some sense of revenge. It was just that I knew it wouldn't change anything. Whatever was left between us had already burned out a long time ago. Tonight was just the final spark. I set the phone down beside me and closed my eyes, but the images wouldn't stop. Claire laughing, her glass flying, her cold eyes staring back at me. How had it come to this? How had we gone from what we used to be to this? When did the constant little jabs, the dismissals, the emotional distance become so routine that I couldn't see it until it was too late? I hadn't even seen the shift, and now I didn't know how to fix it. I wasn't innocent in this. I hadn't done anything to stop it. All those years, letting her little insults slide, pretending like they didn't matter, keeping the peace when I should have fought back. It all added up, and now this was the result. I could feel the weight of shame pressing down on me. And it wasn't just the humiliation of her throwing that glass at me. It was the realization that I had let myself become the kind of person who took all of it without standing up for myself. I had let her make me small. I had let her treat me like a joke. I sat up, running my hands over my face. I wasn't angry. I was numb, and that scared me more than anything. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. I should have been furious, but I wasn't. I grabbed my phone again, staring at the empty screen. I wanted to text her, tell her what I was feeling, ask her if she even cared about anything anymore. But I knew it would do no good. The silence was all I had now. The morning came too fast. I woke up to the same silence that had followed me the whole night. My phone sat on the bedside table, its screen glowing faintly. I didn't want to check it, but I did anyway. No texts, no calls, not from Claire, not from anyone. It hit me again like a slap. She hadn't even noticed I was gone. I wasn't surprised, but that didn't make it hurt any less. I checked the time, shoved the phone in my pocket, and left the motel room without a word to the guy at the front desk. He barely looked up as I handed him the key. I didn't care. I couldn't care. I got in the car, started the engine, and drove aimlessly. The same roads, the same neighborhoods, everything feeling smaller, more suffocating. The phone buzzed. A couple of texts from some of Claire's coworkers, checking in, but none of them said anything worth responding to. It was all surface-level shit, the kind of thing people throw out when they don't know what to say. "Hey, you good? Was everything okay last night?" I stared at the messages, numb. What was I supposed to say to them? Was I supposed to explain what happened? To ask for some kind of validation? I didn't want their pity. I didn't want their fake concern. And I didn't want to make it feel like it mattered when, deep down, I knew it didn't. Then the phone buzzed again. This time it was Josh. I hesitated, looking at his name. He'd always been the guy to check in, the one who actually cared. But even this felt wrong. I didn't want to pull him into this. I didn't want to talk about it. So I just stared at his message for a few seconds, wondering if I should respond. "Man, what happened last night? Everything okay?" I put the phone down. I couldn't bring myself to answer him. It felt like he was asking because it was the right thing to do, not because he genuinely cared. That's what it felt like now. Everyone around me doing what they thought they were supposed to, not what they actually wanted to. I kept driving. I didn't know where I was going, and frankly, I didn't care. A few months ago, things felt different. I remembered when Claire used to reach for my hand on the couch, when we'd laugh about stupid stuff that didn't matter. I remembered the little things, how she used to look at me like I was enough, like I mattered. Now, it all felt like a performance. The affection, the smiles, the small talk. It had all turned into politeness, the kind that masks real feelings and just keeps the gears of the day turning. I didn't know when it started, but I could trace the shift. The little barbs, the quiet dismissals, the way she stopped listening and started speaking over me. I'd let it slide, told myself it was just the stress of work or whatever else she blamed. But this, what happened last night, it made it clear. I wasn't the guy I used to be, and I didn't know if I could be him again. I didn't even know if I wanted to. I picked up the phone again, checking Josh's message, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to defend myself, to explain how I'd walked out on a dinner with her friends like some pathetic loser, or how I wasn't even worth an apology from the woman I'd been married to for years. I didn't want to engage with any of it. Instead, I let the phone buzz again. The texts piled up. More messages from friends, coworkers, people who had no idea what was really going on. It was all noise. I turned the volume off, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and kept driving. I couldn't fix what was broken. Maybe it had been broken for longer than I even realized. But I wasn't going to waste time pretending anymore. I wasn't going to keep chasing something that had already slipped away. So I sat there, in the silence of my car, watching the streets pass by. I felt the weight of everything crashing in on me. The shame, the anger, the hurt, the realization that I had let this all happen. But there was no one to talk to. No one who would really listen. and I was done trying to convince myself it would get better. I didn't know what I was expecting when I walked back into the house, but it sure as hell wasn't silence. Not a word from her, no mention of where I had been or why I left. The house felt empty, quiet, like nothing had happened at all. It was unsettling in a way I couldn't put into words. The air felt thick, like something was hanging between us, but neither of us wanted to name it. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter, my shoes making a soft thud as I walked through the house. I checked the living room. Nothing. The bathroom door was half open upstairs. I walked toward it slowly, trying to convince myself it wasn't as bad as it felt, that maybe I was just being dramatic. I knocked lightly. No answer. "Claire," I called. She didn't respond, but I could hear the sound of running water, her humming faintly in the background. It felt so fucking normal. Too normal. I opened the door a little more. There she was, standing in front of the mirror, towel wrapped around her body, combing her hair. Her back was to me. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low, like I wasn't even sure if I should be talking. She glanced over her shoulder, barely acknowledging me. "Oh, hey," she said, tone flat, almost like she hadn't even realized I was gone. "You're back." I couldn't even look at her for a second. The casualness of it all. Like the glass didn't shatter, like I didn't walk out in front of her coworkers, like it didn't matter. I stood there for a second, waiting for something to click, for some recognition. But there was nothing. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to... I stopped myself. What was I even doing? What was the point? I already knew she wasn't going to care. She turned back to the mirror, giving me her back again. "Well, I hope you're not still mad. It wasn't a big deal. Just got a little... heated." She didn't even look at me when she said it. "But it's fine. You can drop it." I felt a quiet anger rising in me, but I didn't know where to direct it. At her? At myself? I opened my mouth, but no words came out at first. I wanted to yell, to demand an apology, but I knew it was useless. She wouldn't care. She never did. "Really?" I asked, my voice low but steady. "You think it's that simple?" She shrugged, turning off the tap and wiping her hands on the towel. "Yeah, it's just a thing that happened. No need to make it into more than that." I could feel the anger crawling up my spine, but I didn't give in. No shouting, no fighting. This wasn't about that anymore. It wasn't about her throwing the glass. It wasn't even about what happened last night. "It's not just about last night," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. "It's everything. The way you've been treating me, the way we've been drifting apart." She glanced at me again, this time with a small, disinterested smile. "You're overthinking things. It's just life, you know? Things get complicated. But you're here, I'm here, and that's what matters." She turned back to the mirror, brushing through her hair again, completely indifferent. I stood there, frozen, watching her. Her response hit harder than I expected, like a slap without the sting. It was as if nothing mattered, as if all of it, everything I'd been holding on to, was just... whatever. It was clear now. There was no fight to be had. There was no point in talking anymore. No point in asking for things to be different. "You're right," I said finally, turning away. "Maybe I am overthinking it. Maybe this is just what it is now." She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. It was like she'd already checked out. Like she'd already made peace with it all, and I was just too slow to catch up. I went downstairs without another word. I felt a strange calm settling over me, a kind of quiet resignation. I realized then that I wasn't going to fight for this anymore. I couldn't. She wasn't even fighting for us. That was the moment, the turning point. The point where I stopped trying to keep everything together, trying to play nice, trying to smooth things over. I couldn't be the guy who bent and twisted himself into whatever she needed just to keep things from falling apart. I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't going to be. And I didn't know what came next, but at least I knew one thing for sure. Whatever it was, I wasn't going to pretend anymore. It didn't take long for Claire to notice the change. At first, it was subtle, like a whispering undercurrent she couldn't quite ignore. I stopped answering her questions with the same enthusiasm, stopped trying to keep up with the routines that used to hold us together. I didn't make plans to go out. I didn't offer to help with anything. I just kept my distance. At first, she tried to pretend like nothing was different, like I was just in a mood or having a phase. But it didn't take long for her to try and prod me back into the role I used to play, the role I'd been forced into for so long. One afternoon, a few days after the whole thing with the glass, she stormed into the living room with a stack of papers in her hands. She was fuming, eyes sharp and accusatory. "You didn't send the report to the client," she said, voice cutting through the silence like a knife. I barely looked up from the book I was reading. "I know." She stood there, waiting for an apology, for an excuse, for some sort of defense. Something to latch onto and use against me. I didn't give it to her. "How could you forget?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "This was important, and you didn't even—" "I know," I said again, cutting her off. She blinked, surprised by my lack of response. It was as if I wasn't playing the game anymore, and she didn't know what to do with it. Instead of defending myself, instead of telling her I'd been busy, overwhelmed, or apologizing for the mistake, I just agreed. "You're right. I should have sent it. I fucked up." The room went quiet. Her posture shifted, like she didn't know where to take it from there. I hadn't argued with her. I hadn't tried to explain myself or make excuses. It was almost like she didn't know who I was anymore. She took a step back, mouth opening and closing like she was trying to figure out what to say. But I wasn't playing along, wasn't giving her the reaction she expected. After a beat, she let out a small, frustrated sigh and walked away. That was the thing about Claire. She thrived on control, on keeping people off balance, on being able to direct the flow of things with a sharp word or a raised eyebrow. And for years, I'd let her do it. I'd let her push me around, let her dictate how things went, all in the name of keeping the peace. But now I wasn't bending anymore. I wasn't letting her have that control. A few days later, she tried again. She cooked dinner, something she hadn't done in months. The smell of it wafted through the house, but I didn't feel anything. No nostalgia, no need to sit down and pretend everything was fine. She called me to the table, but I didn't move. "Are you going to eat, or are you just going to sit there and ignore me?" she asked, her voice tight, trying to provoke me. I looked at her without responding. There was a pause, and then she huffed and sat down, her back stiff. She didn't say another word for the rest of the meal. Neither did I. I'd stopped offering to help, stopped trying to fix things. I wasn't doing it out of spite, though at times it felt like I should be. I just knew that any effort on my part would only be a band-aid over a wound that had been festering for too long. She had never really seen me, not the real me, and the more I gave, the less of myself was left. It was a strange thing, detaching. At first, I wasn't sure if it was because I was angry or because I had finally accepted that nothing was going to change. I wasn't making a statement. I was just stepping back from something that had already crumbled. A couple of nights later, she tried talking to me again. She started in with some small talk, asking if I'd seen the new show she liked, or if I'd thought about taking a trip somewhere. She acted like we were having a casual conversation, as if we hadn't just hit rock bottom. I didn't answer. I just stared at the TV. She kept talking, her voice soft at first, then growing more insistent as she waited for a reaction. "Don't you care anymore?" she asked, voice tight now. I looked at her, finally. "I do. I just don't know how to care about this anymore." She blinked, looking taken aback for a moment. It was a small moment, but it was enough. "I'm not sure I want to try anymore," I added quietly. She didn't say anything after that. She got up, went to the kitchen, and started cleaning up like it was a normal night. No apologies, no acknowledgement of what had just been said. It was like we were both pretending, but only one of us was still playing the part. And I wasn't playing anymore. She left the house that evening with her friends from work, Aaron included. I didn't ask where they were going, didn't ask if I should come along. I didn't care. I sat in the living room, the same place where we used to spend so many evenings together, reading a book I wasn't really reading. The pages blurred as I stared at the words without processing them. The house felt like a shell, like it used to be home, but it wasn't anymore. I heard them laugh as they piled into their cars. Claire's voice, loud and carefree, rose above the others as she went out the door, but I didn't listen to the words. I just sat there, numb, flicking through the pages. The hours stretched on, the evening creeping toward late. I didn't check the time. I didn't need to. I knew when she would come back. I knew it would be after midnight, and I knew exactly what to expect. Her walking in, expecting me to be asleep, expecting me to pretend nothing had changed. I didn't care anymore, though. I wasn't going to play the game. She came in as quietly as she could, the sound of the door creaking faintly. I didn't move from the couch. The TV was off, the only light coming from the lamp beside me, casting a soft glow over the room. She stood there for a moment, just inside the door, probably waiting for a response. I didn't give her one. She stepped further into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, and then she stopped. Her eyes shifted from me to the couch, as if trying to read the room. Her voice, still too bright, still a little too forced, came next. "Did you miss me?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I didn't even look up. I just shook my head slowly, the words coming out as a dead weight. "No." She was silent for a moment, then let out a short, tight laugh. "You don't even care, do you?" I finally met her eyes then, just for a second. "I don't." She blinked, thrown off by the flatness in my voice. She expected a fight, maybe a tearful confession, some kind of desperate plea from me. But I wasn't giving her any of that. I wasn't begging for attention or trying to make things right anymore. I was done with that. "Well, that's nice," she said, the irritation creeping in now, though she didn't know how to handle it. "Are you even going to ask how my night went?" "No," I said it simply. "I don't care how your night went." Her face twisted for a moment, unsure whether she should laugh it off or get angry. She settled on the latter. "Why the hell not? You used to want to know. You used to care." She stood a little straighter, waiting for me to respond, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. I didn't move. I didn't even try to explain. "I don't care about anything anymore," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "And I'm not going to pretend I do." The silence between us stretched out. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Her face flushed a little, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw her unsure of herself. It wasn't the anger or the arrogance I was used to. It was confusion, real, raw confusion. She took a step closer to me, still trying to find a crack in my wall. "What happened to you? You were never like this." "Neither were you," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "You used to be different too." She hesitated, then let out a sharp breath. "Fine, I don't need this," she said, turning away, her voice thick with frustration. "You don't care. I get it." But she wasn't leaving. She was just waiting for me to chase after her, to make it all okay again. But I didn't. I didn't even get up from the couch. I just watched her as she stood there, arms still crossed, her back turned to me. The thing was, she was never going to get it. She was never going to understand that this, what had happened between us, wasn't something I could fix with a few kind words or a spontaneous dinner. I couldn't keep pretending that we were just in a rough patch. There was no patch left. This thing was gone. She turned back toward me, her frustration barely contained, but I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I felt free. It was a strange kind of peace, a stillness that settled in my chest, the kind of quiet that came when you finally stopped pretending. "I'm done," I said softly, almost to myself. "This is over." She froze. Her eyes went wide, the shock running through her face before she could mask it. I wasn't waiting for her to answer. I wasn't expecting her to apologize, or even to cry. I didn't need any of that. I had already made my peace. She stood there for a moment longer, her mouth opening and closing, as if she were about to say something, anything to keep the conversation going. But nothing came out. She couldn't understand this. She couldn't understand that the game was over, so she turned and walked away, the door clicking shut behind her. But I didn't feel the urge to follow. I felt control for the first time in a long time. The weight, the exhaustion, the need to fix everything, it all slipped away. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need her to play along. I didn't need anything from her. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I finally understood that. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon. It was so familiar, the kind of thing she used to do when she was trying to make everything feel okay again. She didn't say anything when I got downstairs, but I could hear the soft clatter of dishes and the sizzle from the kitchen. She was standing over the stove, flipping pancakes. She didn't turn around when I walked in, but I could feel her eyes on me. The air between us was thick with the same tension we'd been living with for weeks, but she was trying to push it aside, like nothing had changed. I didn't move. I stood in the doorway watching her. She put a plate down in front of me, but I didn't touch it. I just sat down, not bothering to hide the coldness in my eyes. She didn't seem to care. She smiled, that same smile she used to give me when she thought everything would be fine if she tried hard enough. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, trying to sound casual. "It's been a while since we had breakfast together." I stared at the plate. The food was warm, freshly made, but I couldn't bring myself to care about it. I didn't care about anything she was doing, not anymore. She was trying to pull us back into some fake normalcy, trying to fix things with small gestures, but they didn't mean anything to me anymore. "Thanks," I said, my voice flat. She sat down across from me, her hands wrapped around her own mug of coffee, but she didn't drink it. She watched me, waiting. I didn't offer anything in return, didn't ask how she was or if she was okay. I wasn't pretending anymore. She tried again a few hours later, bringing me my favorite sweater from the closet, folding it neatly in my lap with a small smile. "I thought you might want this. It's cold out today." I didn't say anything. I didn't even look at her. I just left the sweater sitting there, not bothering to acknowledge the gesture. It was like I was in a different world from her, and she couldn't even see it. She didn't stop, though. She didn't get the hint. That evening, she tried again, this time with dinner. She spent the whole afternoon cooking something special, something I hadn't asked for. She set the table as if we were going to pretend everything was fine, as if I could just fall back into the routine of it all. When I walked in, she smiled brightly at me. "I made your favorite. Thought it'd be nice to have a quiet night together." I didn't respond. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, staring at her, feeling the weight of her expectations pressing down on me. She wanted me to play along. She wanted me to fall back into the role of the dutiful husband, the one who appreciated her efforts, the one who cared enough to act like everything was normal. But I didn't. I stayed silent. I didn't pick up my fork. Her smile faltered, and she sat down across from me. I could see the frustration in her eyes now, the realization that I wasn't reacting the way she wanted. I wasn't even trying to pretend anymore. She pushed her food around on her plate, her gaze flickering between me and the table, looking for something, anything, that would make me break. When it didn't come, her voice was sharper than before. "You're not going to say anything?" I looked at her, steady and unflinching. "No." It hit her, I could tell. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to not having control over the situation. She'd always been the one to fix things, to smooth over the cracks, to pull me back when I started slipping. But now I wasn't playing along. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. She kept trying, kept poking, prodding, like she was looking for a crack in the wall she could exploit. But there was nothing. I wasn't going to crack. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "What happened to us?" she asked, her voice quieter now. "Why are you being like this?" I didn't answer. I didn't owe her an answer. I'd given her everything I had, over and over, and where had it gotten me? She was still the same. Still manipulating, still playing her game. But now, I wasn't bending to it. She pushed her plate away, frustration leaking into her voice again. "You can't just shut me out like this. You can't pretend like I'm not here." "I'm not pretending," I said, my voice calm. "You just don't see it." She blinked at me, trying to process what I meant, but she couldn't. She couldn't understand that I was done being her emotional punching bag, done bending to her will just to keep the peace. The more I withdrew, the more she was thrown off balance. I could see it in the way she was trying to control the situation, the way she was grasping for something she could use to make me care again. But I didn't care. Not in the way she wanted me to. I realized then, as I watched her sit there, her frustration mounting, that all these years I'd been giving her the power. Every time I apologized when I didn't need to, every time I kept my mouth shut to avoid a fight, every time I made myself small just to keep her happy. And now, I was taking it back. I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. I wasn't going to bend. She didn't understand. She wouldn't. And that was okay. It was a couple of days after the dinner when I got the message from Julie. I didn't expect to hear from her. I thought maybe she'd just forgotten about the whole thing, like everyone else did. But there it was, a simple text. "Hey, I'm really sorry I didn't say anything the other night. I've been thinking about it, and I'd like to talk if you're open to it." At first, I hesitated. I didn't know what she could possibly have to say that would make any difference. But I was curious. And maybe, just maybe, I needed to know if there was something more I was missing. I agreed to meet her. She picked a quiet cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place that felt like it was stuck in a different time. I sat down at a corner table, waiting. When she walked in, she looked nervous, like she wasn't sure how to start. I didn't know what to expect, but the look on her face told me this wasn't going to be casual. She sat down across from me, folding her hands in front of her. "I've been going back and forth on whether or not to tell you," she said, her voice low. "But I can't stop thinking about what happened, and I don't think it's fair to you." My stomach twisted. The way she was speaking. This wasn't just about the glass. I knew that. I'm listening, I said, keeping my voice steady, even though I could feel the tension creeping up. She hesitated for a moment, looking around the cafe like she was checking for something, someone, to overhear. Then she finally spoke, her words soft but clear. After you left the dinner, Claire made some comments. Julie paused as if trying to find the right words. She didn't even seem upset. It was like she didn't care that you were gone. She made fun of you, actually. My chest tightened, and I leaned in a little, barely breathing. What did she say? Julie took a deep breath. She said you were just overreacting, that it wasn't a big deal. Then she said something about how you'd always come crawling back. Like you were just going to let it go and come back to her, that you always did. I felt like someone had just kicked me in the gut. My hands tightened around my coffee cup, but I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure I could. Julie looked at me, her expression filled with something like regret. I didn't know if I should say anything. I didn't want to cause more trouble, but I kept thinking about how she dismissed it, how she mocked you, and I felt wrong about it. Her words hit me like a freight train. That was it. That was the confirmation of everything I'd been feeling, but couldn't quite admit to myself. My wife, the woman I'd tried so damn hard to keep this marriage together for, had never respected me. Not really, not even when I was doing everything I could to make things right. She didn't just throw the glass that night. She'd been throwing it all along. I sat back in my chair, letting the silence stretch between us. Julie's voice faded into the background as I absorbed what she'd just told me. The idea that Claire had mocked me in front of everyone, that she thought I would just bend and come back, stung worse than I expected. It wasn't just about the glass anymore. It wasn't even about the dinner or the words she'd said. It was about the fact that she'd never taken me seriously, that everything I'd done had been for nothing. Julie shifted in her seat, watching me carefully. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but I couldn't just stay quiet. I felt like you deserved to know. I nodded slowly, trying to absorb it all. I wanted to ask her more, to press her for every detail, but I already had enough. I didn't need the specifics to know where this was headed. Thank you, I said, my voice rougher than I wanted it to be. For telling me. Julie looked relieved, like she was glad to have said it, but there was nothing else to say. I didn't need to hear any more. I was already making up my mind, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place in my head. I stood up, pushing my chair back. Julie followed my lead, standing as well. I gave her a brief nod, the kind of gesture that said everything without words. She paused, like she was waiting for me to say something else, but I didn't have anything left to say. I'd already heard what I needed to. The truth had been laid out in front of me, and now there was nothing left but to move forward. Take care of yourself, she said softly, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. But I didn't reply. I couldn't. I walked out of the cafe, the door clicking shut behind me, and I stood for a moment on the sidewalk, letting the weight of it all sink in. Claire's words, Julie's words, the mess I had ignored for so long, it was all coming together in a way that was impossible to deny. For the first time in a long while, I felt clear. I understood everything now. There was no more pretending. There was no more holding on to something that wasn't worth saving. And now, I was free to let it go. It wasn't hard to make the decision. I'd already known for a while that I was done, but the conversation with Julie had confirmed what I'd been avoiding. The truth was clear now. Claire didn't respect me, didn't care about me, and I was tired of pretending I could fix something that was already broken beyond repair. I rented a small apartment in a part of town that felt far enough away to breathe, but close enough that I wouldn't have to make a scene. I started to take steps to separate myself from her, checking accounts, setting aside what I needed to survive. It wasn't about revenge. It was about getting out, cutting the ties that had kept me anchored to a person who had never really seen me. When I packed, I kept it simple. A few clothes, some personal things, nothing too sentimental. I wasn't attached to much anymore. Whatever reminders I took, I knew they'd be gone soon enough, leaving me with only what I needed. It was early one morning when Claire asked about my suit jacket. I had it hanging in the closet for a while, but when I went to the apartment, I'd left it behind. "Have you seen my jacket?" she asked, her voice casual but still carrying that sharp edge I'd come to recognize. I didn't even look up. I took it to the dry cleaner. She didn't question it. She just nodded and moved on, too wrapped up in whatever else she had going on to pay attention to the small things. She was oblivious, still caught up in the performance of everything being fine. It was on a Saturday when she was hosting another one of her gatherings, more work friends, more pretenses, that I decided it was time. She was busy, surrounded by the noise of laughter and conversation, just like the night I left. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to shout or beg or try to explain. I was just going to leave. I grabbed the last of my things, slid the letter I'd written onto the kitchen counter, and walked out. I didn't look back. The apartment was quiet when I arrived, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was in the right place. The silence was different, calmer. There was no pressure, no weight, just the sound of my own breath. It was strange to think that, for so long, I had fought to make things work with a woman who had never seen me as more than a tool to fill whatever need she had. Hours passed. It wasn't until that evening, after I'd settled into the apartment, that I got the message. I knew what it was before I even read it. Claire had found the letter. I didn't care. I didn't care when she tried to call. Didn't care when I saw her friends post about how they'd tried to make sense of it all. I was gone, and they were left to deal with the consequences. By the time she realized what had really happened, it was too late. She couldn't fix this. She couldn't salvage her reputation, couldn't pretend she hadn't shown me who she really was. And I was free, no longer tied to the emotional manipulation, no longer tied to a woman who never valued me. The weight I'd carried for so long was gone. For the first time in years, I could breathe, and I knew I was never going back.